A flower grows through stone, not around it, through it. The crack was there first, hidden and silent, and the seed found its way into the darkness. What broke the stone was not force, it was patience, it was time. It was the quiet transformation of pressure into bloom. This is the paradox we rarely speak of. Suffering is not the enemy of wisdom. It is the soil from which wisdom grows. And yet we spend our lives trying to avoid it, numb it, outrun it. We treat pain like a problem to be solved, when in truth, it may be the question we were always meant to live inside of. Let me begin by saying this with all gentleness. You are not broken because you suffer. You are not failing because life feels heavy. Suffering is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are alive, that you are awake, that you are feeling the full weight of being human. And within that weight, if we are willing to hold it without flinching, there is a wisdom so deep it cannot be taught through books or lectures. It can only be learned through living, through breaking, through putting ourselves back together with trembling hands and discovering that the cracks, those places where the light gets in, are where we become most truly ourselves. There is an old teaching in the Buddhist tradition. It is simple, but it is not easy. It says that the nature of life is dukkha. This word is often translated as suffering, but that translation is incomplete. Dukkha is more than just pain. It is the unsatisfactoriness of clinging. It is the ache of wanting things to be different than they are. It is the friction between reality and our expectations. It is the exhaustion of resisting the truth. And here is the radical insight hidden within this teaching. The problem is not the pain itself. The problem is what we do with it, how we hold it, how we push it away or grip it too tightly, how we tell ourselves stories about what it means, who we are because of it, and whether we will ever be free of it. Take a slow breath now. Feel the air move in. Feel it move out. Notice how your body is holding this moment. Are your shoulders tight? Is your jaw clenched? Are you already thinking about what comes next? Or are you here, right now, with me? This is where transformation begins. Not in some distant monastery or mountaintop retreat, right here. In the willingness to stop running, to stop pretending, to stop performing strength, when what we really need is to soften. Let me tell you a story. There was once a young monk who lived in a monastery high in the mountains. Every day he would sit in meditation, trying to empty his mind, trying to find peace. But every day the same thoughts would return. Memories of his childhood, a father who was cold, a mother who left, words that were said and cannot be unsaid, wounds that had calcified into armor. He tried to push the thoughts away. He tried to breathe through them. He tried to pretend they were not there. And every day he failed. The harder he tried to find peace, the more agitated he became, until one day, exhausted and desperate, he went to his teacher and said, "Master, I cannot do this. The pain is too much. I have tried everything, and I cannot make it go away." The teacher looked at him with eyes that had seen 1,000 storms, and he said, "Why are you trying to make it go away?" The monk was confused. He said, "Because it hurts. Because it is in the way of my peace." The teacher smiled. He said, "It is not in the way. It is the way." And then he told the monk to sit, not to meditate, not to empty his mind, but to invite the pain in, to welcome it like an old friend, to ask it, "What are you trying to teach me?" And for the first time, the monk stopped fighting. He stopped resisting. He sat with the grief, the anger, the shame, the loneliness. He let them wash over him like waves. And slowly, something began to shift. The pain did not disappear, but it changed. It softened. It became less like a wall and more like a doorway. And on the other side of that doorway was a truth he had been running from his entire life. That he was not his wounds, that he was not his story, that beneath all the hurt was a stillness, a spaciousness, a capacity to hold it all without breaking. This is the first step in transforming suffering into wisdom. We must stop treating pain as the enemy. We must stop seeing it as something to be fixed or eliminated. We must begin to understand that suffering, when met with awareness and compassion, becomes a teacher. It shows us where we are clinging, where we are resisting, where we are trying to control the uncontrollable. It reveals the places where we have built walls around our hearts, thinking we were protecting ourselves, when in truth we were only isolating ourselves. And when we begin to see this, when we begin to soften into the truth of our own vulnerability, something remarkable happens. The suffering does not go away, but we change, we grow, we expand, we become capable of holding more, not because we are stronger, but because we are more open, more tender, more real. But here is the second step, and it is just as important. We must stop believing the stories we tell about our suffering. We must stop making it mean something about who we are. So often, when pain arrives, we immediately begin to narrate. We say, "This is happening because I am not good enough, because I am broken, because I deserve it, because life is unfair, because the universe is punishing me." We take the raw experience of suffering and we wrap it in layers of interpretation, judgment, and identity. And those layers, not the pain itself, are what keep us stuck. Because once we believe the story, once we believe that we are the person to whom bad things happen, we stop looking for the wisdom. We stop asking the deeper questions. We become a victim of our own narrative. Let me be clear. I am not saying that your pain is not real. I am not saying that what happened to you did not matter. I am not saying that you should simply think positive and move on. What I am saying is this: the pain is real, but the story you tell about it is optional. And that story, that interpretation, is where so much of our suffering lives. When we can begin to separate the two, when we can say, yes, this hurts, and no, it does not define me, we create space. Space for healing, space for growth, space for a different kind of understanding to emerge. There's a practice in Zen Buddhism called shikantaza. It means just sitting. No mantra, no visualization, no goal, just sitting with whatever arises. And in that sitting, in that radical acceptance of the present moment, we begin to see that thoughts are just thoughts, feelings are just feelings. They come and they go like clouds in the sky. And we, the awareness that watches them, are not the clouds. We are the sky itself, vast, open, unchanging. This is the wisdom that suffering can teach us if we let it, that we are not our pain. We are the space in which pain can exist without consuming us. Take another breath, softer this time. Let your shoulders drop. Let your face relax. Notice the stillness beneath the noise. It is always there, even now. Even in the middle of your hardest day, there is a part of you that is untouched by suffering. Not because it is numb or detached, but because it is so much larger than any single experience. And the more you learn to rest in that space, the more you learn to return to it again and again, the less you are controlled by the waves of emotion and circumstance. You do not stop feeling. You do not become cold. You simply become more stable, more grounded, more at home in your own being. Now let us talk about the practical side of this transformation, because it is one thing to understand this intellectually, and another thing entirely to live it. So how do we actually transform suffering into wisdom in our daily lives? How do we take this teaching from the cushion into the chaos of the real world? It begins with awareness. The moment you notice you are suffering, pause. Do not immediately try to fix it or distract yourself from it. Just pause and ask yourself, what is actually happening right now? Not what you think it means, not what story you are telling about it, just the raw, unfiltered experience. Are you feeling a tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your limbs, a knot in your stomach? Name it, not to judge it, but to see it clearly. Because the moment we can see our suffering clearly, without all the layers of interpretation, it begins to lose its power over us. Next, turn toward it. This is the hardest part. Every instinct in your body will want to turn away, to numb, to escape. But I invite you, just for a moment, to turn toward the pain, to get curious about it, to ask it, what are you here to show me? Not in a spiritual bypassing way, not pretending it does not hurt, but in a genuinely open way. Because pain is information. It is your body and your heart trying to tell you something. Maybe it is telling you that you have been pushing too hard. Maybe it is telling you that a boundary has been crossed. Maybe it is telling you that you are carrying something that is not yours to carry. Listen, not with your head, but with your whole being. And then, practice compassion. This is the most overlooked part of the transformation. We are so good at being compassionate toward others, and so terrible at being compassionate toward ourselves. But if you are going to transform suffering into wisdom, you must learn to hold yourself with the same tenderness you would offer a frightened child. You must learn to say, "This is hard, and I am doing my best. This hurts, and I am allowed to feel it. I am not weak for struggling. I am human," because self-compassion is not indulgence. It is not wallowing. It is the foundation of resilience. It is what allows us to stay present with our pain without being destroyed by it. There is a beautiful image in Buddhist art called the Bodhisattva of compassion. She is often depicted with 1,000 arms, each hand holding a different tool, reaching out to ease the suffering of the world. But what is less often mentioned is that she also has 1,000 eyes. Eyes that see the suffering clearly. Eyes that do not look away. And this is the balance we must find. To see the suffering, to acknowledge it, and to respond with both wisdom and compassion. Not fixing, not forcing, but holding, tending, allowing the transformation to happen in its own time. Over time, if you practice this consistently, something shifts. You begin to notice patterns. You begin to see that the same kinds of suffering arise again and again, and they all point to the same root cause: attachment. Attachment to outcomes. Attachment to how things should be. Attachment to being right, being safe, being in control. And as you see this more clearly, you begin to let go. Not because you have to, but because it becomes obvious that holding on is what hurts. That the tighter you grip, the more you suffer. And in that letting go, in that softening, wisdom begins to bloom. This wisdom is not something you can force or manufacture. It arises naturally, like the flower through the stone, when the conditions are right. And the conditions are simple, though not easy. Awareness, acceptance, compassion, and time. You cannot rush it. You cannot skip steps. You must be willing to sit with the discomfort, to feel what you feel, to let the process unfold. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to change. You become less reactive, less defended, more open, more alive. You begin to see that suffering is not a sign of failure, but a sign of depth. A sign that you are engaged with life, not hiding from it. Let me share another teaching. There is a concept in Buddhism called the middle way. It is the path between extremes. Not too tight, not too loose, not clinging to pleasure, not pushing away pain, not indulging, not denying. Just meeting life as it is, with balance and grace. This is the essence of transforming suffering into wisdom. We are not trying to eliminate pain. We are not trying to become invincible or unfeeling. We are trying to develop the capacity to be with whatever arises, without being overwhelmed by it. To feel deeply without being consumed. To care without being controlled. To love without losing ourselves. And here is the gift hidden within this practice. As you learn to transform your own suffering, you begin to hold space for the suffering of others. Not in a way that drains you or depletes you, but in a way that is deeply grounded and nourishing. Because you have learned that pain is not something to be feared or fixed. It is something to be witnessed, something to be held, something to be honored as part of the human experience. And in that witnessing, in that presence, you offer something rare and precious, the gift of being seen, of being met, of being allowed to be exactly as you are, without judgment or pressure to be different. This is how suffering becomes wisdom, not through intellectual understanding, but through lived experience, through the willingness to walk into the fire and discover that you do not burn, through the courage to break open and find that what spills out is not weakness, but light, through the humility to admit that you do not have all the answers, and the faith to keep showing up anyway. Notice where you are right now. Notice the sounds around you, the feeling of your body resting, the rhythm of your breath. This is the only moment you have. Not the past, with all its regrets and sorrows. Not the future, with all its uncertainties and fears. Just this, just now. And in this moment, you are not your suffering. You are the awareness that holds it. You are the vastness that can contain it all. And that is not a spiritual platitude. That is a direct, lived truth that you can return to again and again, no matter how lost you feel. As we come to the end of this reflection, I want to offer you one final thought. Transformation is not a destination. It is not something you achieve once and then you are done. It is a practice, a daily returning, a constant choice to meet yourself and your life with honesty and compassion. There will be days when you forget, days when the pain feels too big, too heavy, too much, days when you fall back into old patterns and old stories, and that is okay. That is part of the process. The wisdom is not in never falling. The wisdom is in knowing how to get back up, in remembering that every moment is a new beginning, that every breath is an opportunity to start again. So I invite you, right now, to make a commitment, not to be perfect, not to eliminate all suffering from your life, but to be willing to turn toward your pain instead of away from it, willing to ask the deeper questions, willing to sit in the discomfort long enough for the wisdom to emerge, willing to trust that there is something valuable hidden within every experience of suffering, if you are brave enough to look for it, and willing to be gentle with yourself along the way, knowing that this is the hardest and most important work you will ever do. The stone does not resent the flower. The flower does not apologize for growing. There is no conflict, no struggle, only the quiet insistence of life moving through what resists it. And in the end, what looked like breaking was actually becoming. What felt like suffering was actually transformation. What seemed like the end was actually the beginning. This is the wisdom waiting for you, not somewhere out there, in some distant future when you are finally healed or enlightened or free, but here, now, in the very center of your pain, in the very heart of your struggle, in the very breath you are taking right now. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone. Every person who has ever lived has walked this path. Every teacher, every saint, every awakened being started exactly where you are, in the mud, in the mess, in the beautiful, terrible, precious struggle of being human. And they found their way through, not by avoiding the suffering, but by allowing it to change them, by letting it crack them open, by trusting that on the other side of the breaking is a wholeness more vast and true than anything they could have imagined.